My name is Adrian Nantchev, and this channel is all about helping you become a remarkable entrepreneur. So today, I am with Randy Herman to talk about Herman. I'm here with Randy, at least, to talk about his business. So please, Randy, tell us about yourself. Who are you? What's your vision? What's your purpose? And what dent are you making in the world?
So hello, everybody. My name is Randy Herman. I'm 30 years old. I just started as an entrepreneur because really I never knew what was entrepreneurship until, well, when I discovered Gary Vaynerchuk, I would say, which was in September, October, more or less. But before that, I was always very active. I mean, I was kind of an entrepreneur because I started at the age of 13 to build websites. And I did that because I wanted to buy a kite surfing. I know, you know what's kite surfing? Okay, cool. So I wanted to buy a kite, and by the age of 17, I had my kite, and I became a professional kiteboarder. I started traveling the world, and from there I ended up in Brazil. I broke my ACL, my cross ligament, and that demotivated me to continue because my sponsors, they were not really faithful to me. While I was injured, they decided to dump me, to let me be and let me recover, and then pick me up again. And I thought it was so unethical. And I was so disappointed by that I was searching for something different. So then I discovered online poker. And I played online poker living in Brazil for about 6 years. And then I moved back to the Netherlands. I became vegan, which directly gave me a mission, a cause to do something more. So I became an activist. And I went on the streets. And you can still look at it on itsnotsalad.com. You find some street interviews. But basically what I say is that activists, they raise awareness, and entrepreneurs create solutions. And I wanted to do more than raise awareness. I want to create solutions at the same time. And then I stumbled upon Gary Vaynerchuk, and I got really into this entrepreneurship thing. And then I had to find my path, my mission. And that's when I started with Lilita. And Lilita is a project that I want to start. I already started it, actually. But in the beginning, I had 10 volunteers wanting to help me. I had 10 people in 10 days. And then after a month, I had about 30 people. And this was, this was a cool experience. I learned a lot. But working with volunteers is not something for me. When I try to do something, I always want to do it with the full 300%. And when you work with volunteers, often it's something they do on the side. And you cannot go as fast. You cannot demand as much. And I think that even if you're a non-profit organization, you need to have the money to give somebody a normal paycheck. So at the end of the month, he can do the normal things, live the normal life without sacrificing himself. So he can actually do the best job he can do. And you can get A-type players to work towards creating some awareness and help out people. So now I've got a really cool project with Project Lilita. And that's about helping other non-profit organizations and be kind of like a hub. But it's still in the making, so I can't say much more about that for now. But we're going to do a lot of good things. So in the meantime, I'm running the Vegan Entrepreneur Community. It's a community for vegan entrepreneurs to help them and support them. I run the Attention Store, which is my personal branding, brand and content design strategy agency. It's new. I just started it. I have a lot of experience with it because I had to do everything myself from my kite surfing years on. So that's where I'm at right now. Besides that, I'm vlogging as well. And I run the Builder All You community, which is a YouTube channel, which is soon to be a learning platform for entrepreneurs about branding and content strategies. But they're all things that are mixed up. They're working together, only they're different side niches to get the same result and see which one picks up faster. And right now it looks like Builder All You is the main focus for the next year.
That's very interesting, Randy. You got a lot of stuff, a lot of history going on. Now,
yeah.
With the kite surfing, is that the one where it's like a surfboard on wheels with a mast and sails, isn't it, on the beach?
No, it's in the water. It's like windsurfing, but then a combination between flying a kite and a wakeboard on your feet.
Right.
So you get dragged forward by the power of the kite.
I see. Okay. Interesting. I'm not familiar with that. Not familiar with that. And so how did
Lots
that
of
go?
fun.
When you were in Brazil, you mentioned you had something with your cross ligament. What happened there?
Well, with kitesurfing, you can make insanely big jumps. And I was trying out this prototype kite from my sponsor, which was supposed to be launched in the next year. Only it had a steering default, so it steered a little bit more to the left. And I made a jump, and something went wrong in the jump. I mean, that's a bit too technical to explain, but I lost control of the kite because I was dangling underneath it. And normally when that happens, you basically fall down straight. But because it pulled left, the kite pulled left as well, and I fell down just like basically jumping off a 10-meter high flat building. And I landed on my board, and my knee said crack.
And is this like when you're like 30 meters into the ocean, or is it just like on the beach?
No, I was. It was like 500 meters in the ocean or something.
Right. So this is serious stuff then, serious environment.
Yeah. It's an extreme sport. I mean, I think the basics are pretty good if you know what you're doing and you get some lessons. Mm-hmm. But after that, it's like the level it is today. I'm not at that level anymore. But the level it is today, it's super extreme. Like every year, the best people in the world break the bones in their bodies.
I think it won't be an extreme sport unless you break something.
Exactly.
But why is it then that your sponsor dumped you?
Well, because I think the sponsors are being selfish often. I don't say all, because, for example, I know Red Bull is one of the best sponsors an extreme athlete can have. Red Bull invests in a recovery center in Austria, and they do so much good stuff for their athletes. But it's a lack of budget. And I think what happens often is that in business as well, is that people often consider short-term finance to be more important than long-term results. And the decision because the recovery period of getting an operation for your ACL, your knee ligament, takes about 9 months to recover and be back in the field at the level that you, to start training, and then let's say it takes a full year to get back to the level where you left off. This full year they would have to pay you and continue to pay you, but not get anything in return really. And I think the short-term economics were just too interesting for them to say, hey, we're not going to give you any money because you're not going to give us anything back. And they forget the fact that for the past 3-4 years, I helped them get to where they are now. And in hopefully the next 10 years, I would still be with them. So when they didn't do that, it was a really big demotivator for me.
So you then left the extreme sport and you found your way into poker, online poker.
Yes.
How was that transition? How did that happen?
I was with a friend, and he's also a really extreme athlete, but he's a strongman competitor. He competes around the world for the strongest men competition. So he's one of these really, really big guys. And he took me to a bar in our hometown because I knew him since I'm a kid. And he's like, hey, do you want to go to this poker game? And I was like, sure, let's go. And I ended up 4th out of the 30 or something. So that's pretty good. But I'm extremely competitive. Like, you cannot imagine how competitive I am. So it's the fact that I got 4th and the best 3 people got money, that made me so excited and passionate and curious about the things that I did wrong and how can I improve on that, and how can I, what could I have done to win this? And I didn't understand anything about variance and all these other investment theories yet at that time. But it was just like, it created a spark inside of me that wanted to know more. And I was injured and I had to stay home. So in that same period, I had 4 hours a day of training, and then the rest of the day was resting and doing not much. So I was reading books, I was participating on forums, I was trying to play poker for real money and try to get better and understand the logic and deconstructing everything, reverse engineering all the aspects of what I'm doing and what I was doing and how I was doing it, and slowly I started to win. So I was really hooked on the game, on the theory of the game itself.
What I don't get about online poker is that in the offline version, I know nothing about poker. I've barely ever played it. So I'm coming from a very naive angle, but on an online version, you can't tell what the people think or feel as easily. You can't see the body language, their tells, the twitches or stuff like that. So isn't there how big is the disparity on and offline poker?
I would say it's pretty big. There's a big difference. I think online poker is way more skilled than live poker, and now the live poker pros, they might spit on me when I say that, but I think in terms of technical, like mathematical, analytical skills, online poker is way more advanced because it's all about pattern recognition. And that's why I think it makes me an amazing entrepreneur. It's because I've been doing this like micro investment about 500-600 times an hour, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week for 6 years, and then fighting against the variance and all these, like understanding all these concepts. Because in poker, it's all about statistics. Let's say somebody gets pocket aces, which is the best possible hand, and the other person gets pocket kings. Well, first of all, it's really rare to be in a situation where two people have these premium type of hands and there's going to be this much action. So the fact that you have aces and then the other guy has pocket kings makes you extremely lucky if you have pocket aces, and extremely unlucky to have pocket kings. And even though when you look at your whole cards, the first two cards, and you can have a look at them, if you look at them and you see pocket kings, you make like we say, you jump a hole in the roof. It's a Dutch expression, but it's like you're so happy that you have this hand, but then it turns out that you're so unlucky that this guy has pocket aces, which is like a 0.8% chance that happens. And then it's like you still have a 20% chance of winning, which is a 1 out of 5. So the chances that you win is still really there. So then imagine you win, then the whole mental psychology for both people, and on the roller coaster they're going with emotions, that's pretty pretty extreme mentally.
Yeah, when about a year and a half ago or something like that, I tried my hand at Forex and binary. Apart from one, I found it too slow at times. It was like placing an investment here and waiting and watching, and like, oh, this is far too slow for me. All about emotion control, all about keeping nerves, keeping cool, and that's the same even in business. That's the same with most things in life. Because if you go around letting your emotions dictate your actions, then you are at a serious disadvantage. Yes,
and in poker, that's the exact thing you're looking for. You're looking for the guy on the table. Like the level in poker right now, because you have to understand, when you play poker online, every single poker player that is serious has a database that tracks every single hand that they play. So every single hand that I played against you is registered in my database. So on my screen, I have this display. It's called a HUD, a heads-up display. Yeah, I think it's called a heads-up display. And that HUD is on your screen, on your table, with the player that you're playing against. So you can see how much percentage he raises in which position, how much percentage does he do that. And then you have to learn how to analyze all these numbers in time during the game, and you can find very often the little exploitabilities of a person. So naturally, the best players, they are understanding all these things. So they are working with GTO, game theory optimization. So when it's in theory, you should be unexploitable. So it should be perfect. So then it comes down to who cracks down under pressure first. Who's the guy with the weakest mindset? Who's the guy who gets hung up about the previous hand and therefore doesn't play the next hand optimally? And if you know that, and if you can recognize that, that's where the money is in poker, if you play with the good guys.
So it's purely a game of nerves. Once you get past things like Nash equilibrium and stuff like that, then it's all about nerves.
Yeah, it's all about mindset and control. And then back to the question about live, I'm sure there's a big difference also in live and online poker, because the level of, like, the mistakes that people make playing live, technically speaking, are insane. Like if you go online and you would play a game where you pay 50 cents a dollar for the small blind, big blind, which are like fixed fees that you have to pay. That's how the game gets measured, basically, for those who don't know how to play poker. If you compare that game to a game where the average buy-in is $2,000, probably the game on the internet for 50 cents, $1 is tougher to beat and harder to beat than the live game.
All right, so there's big differences then. A lot of differences.
Huge. You cannot jump in online poker and expect to be a winner without massive amounts of work. And the games are only getting worse and worse because of legislations and countries closing up. And it's like when in America they closed down the borders on it's called Black Friday. It was on a Friday. I remember the day like yesterday. It's like everybody had money on the two biggest websites, PokerStars and Full Tilt Poker at the time. And from one day to another, everything was blocked. Federal Bureau of Investigations blocked everything. Like even my accounts, even though I was living in Brazil or people in Europe, everything was blocked. So they froze all assets. Everybody was in a state of panic. And then 12 hours later or a few hours later, they opened up everything else except the American accounts. And until then, America has never come back to the online poker scene, to the international online poker scene. So what happens is that the whole market suddenly gets segmented. So all the good players, they're moving to a different country. But the bad players, which is the 95% of them, are staying there and they're out of the market. So naturally, the whole market, the level of the market goes up. And this happens to Spain, Italy, France, I think Portugal now as well. So what happens is that all the bad players from the countries, they stay there and they forget about it. They move on to the next thing. And the good players move to a different place. So now all the best players from the world are all living in these different places, but the bad players are all out of the game. So naturally the game gets really tough.
Well, that's one disadvantage of having too big of a government, too many rules and regulations that doesn't let you as an individual do and act in your best interests.
Exactly. It's shitty, but...
But speaking of America, you mentioned a guy, Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm guessing that when you were researching about poker, you came across him and you just learned more from him, or?
No, actually, my investor, he's American. Mm-hmm. And when he heard that I wanted to do something, like start a business or do something like that, because I knew I wanted to change from poker. Poker was not making me happy. The moment I turned vegan, I realized that, I became this guy who doesn't want to do things for him necessarily, but more to create something for others and help others. And I really realized that helping was what I wanted to do because I had everything already. So I don't need anything else. So I wanted to help. And then I was going on this journey of what do I want to do? So I said to my investor in poker, because I didn't play with my own money. I played with the money of an investor. I said to my investor that I wanted to do it, and he's like, oh, you should check out Gary Vaynerchuk. And I never heard of him. So then I started binge watching Gary Vaynerchuk for a week. And I was like, okay, I have to be an entrepreneur because everything he says, I understand and I agree with. And I think the exact same way with 95% of the things he's saying. So that gave me also the confidence to be even more louder on the internet and be more willing to put myself out there and get people against me, but also for me. I mean, a lot of people that I see that are trying to build up their own brand or trying to do marketing or try to get a following, is that they try to please too many people. And when you try to please too many people, you're not pleasing anyone because the people that you actually want, they are not, they're not in line with what you're believing. Like if you want to be the influencer, the leader, whatever, you have to speak louder about the things that people actually are thinking but not willing to say. And then they can align their story with your story that you put it public. I mean, that's the whole core essence of building a following, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I've learned a lot from Gary as well. I really like his strategy where he has content all the time, just what he does, it scales the unscalable, and I really like that a lot. I think that's a damn good way of getting attention and awareness and just grabbing subscribers, grabbing market share and mind share.
Yeah, I agree.
And story, yes. You see, people don't always care about what you're doing, but they care about why you're doing it, why you want to change the world, why you went from poker and became more selfless and decided to go into activism and towards veganism. And I have a lot from Gary Vaynerchuk as well. Indirectly, a mentor, you could say. I don't know how much stuff I've watched or consumed of his, the books and all the rest, but him, along with a few other people, really inspired me to start this channel, start this podcast, and get the whole thing going, get the whole thing started.
Who are the ones that inspired you?
Other one will be Ty Lopez. Ty Lopez, and a little bit of Steve Jobs, as well as Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, that's interesting.
Yes.
I actually researched him as well. When I learned he was serious about going for to become president, I actually started researching him, and even though I think he's a really different guy, I do think that I listen to a lot of his perspectives and things that I'm like, yeah, they make a lot of sense. And I think I don't think he's a good president, but I do think he's a nice change when you look at it long term. This definitely created some awareness and made people awake. And these 4 years are not going to destroy America. These 4 years are not going to do anything. I mean, people will laugh at America for Donald Trump, but every discussion I say is like everybody who loves how do you call this? Democracy. Everybody who loves democracy and always loves to vote for Obama or Clinton or Bernie Sanders, etc. It's like they're so angry about it now and ashamed of America. But I'm like, you should be proud of it because that is democracy at its core. Even though you disagree, this is what the opposition had for the past, 16 years or something.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that Donald Trump because I think Donald Trump is a really fascinating subject in general.
Well, I was following him before June of 2015 when he announced his plan to run for office. But I like him because of the persistency and strength of character, as well as the combined theatre with business.
Exactly.
And showmanship. And I like Steve Jobs because of ingenuity, creativity, and visionary, the way he inspired people. And Ty Lopez because of the very practical, very down-to-earth, scientific ways of approaching entrepreneurship and doing things. And Gary Vaynerchuk because not so much the motivational side, but the insights into human psychology combined with marketing.
I think you put the head on the nail, you say, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you just did that. I think that's really exactly, well put.
But that's the way I see it. I didn't support Trump from day one. I actually supported Rand Paul, but this is like in the very early days of the election. Generally speaking, though, without going too much into politics, Donald, yes, generally speaking, I like what he's doing. Pro-Donald as opposed to Hillary. But I also understand, the next test for him, actually, what's going to happen is he will get a second term, because you're not really a president if you only had one term, and pride will not let him lose the second election, the re-election.
Well, I spoke to an American lady here 2 days ago exactly about this, and she said that a lot of people didn't vote. And those people, they're now aware that they have to vote because their vote is making a difference. So the chances that he would be reelected would be really slim. But still, I mean, he's the one who played the whole media game the best. And in the end, getting results is about getting the attention and convincing the majority of the people that your attention is worth their time. And I think he did a great job at it, even though the way he did his attention or the way he does it is not something I align with at all as a vegan.
I was going to say a few things about that. Now, I'm also confident that he will get to second term because in his book, Off the Deal, he does talk about how in the beginning you want to have the most extreme demands or extreme views because everything else after that is mild in retrospect. And I'm confident that after two years in, his approval rating will increase, and he'll actively work towards increasing that because he knows that people are fickle. People today, on the 28th of July, don't really remember what happened at the end of February when America strike attacked the Assad Assad regime's airport in Syria. That was a massive outrage, even from the people who supported him. But people seem to have forgotten about that. So I'm confident that over time goes on, people will forget a lot about the things that he's done. Not all the controversies, but the nuances. And they'll be much more fickle and much more willing to vote for him, as he's a much more, not centrist, much more popular.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the same thing that Mark Zuckerberg is doing all the time. He's pushing 4 steps forward, then apologizing, but still ending up 1 or 2 steps ahead of where he started.
Well, then maybe that's just different strategy. You might not need to apologize in the first place, depending on what you're doing and what you're saying. I think it also depends on really what kind of outcome you want as well.
No, but it's like basically, look, I have this theory that a lot of people, like everybody has a comfort zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, your comfort zone ends somewhere, and somebody else's comfort zone might end way before that or way past that. So the only way to make somebody grow as a person is by extending their comfort zone, extending the things that they are comfortable with. So by going 3 steps out of the general public's comfort zone, you're going to get a lot of oppression. You're going to let a lot of fight against it. I mean, that's kind of the same principle that Donald Trump explained in his book, if I understand your explanation well. And I think that's like, if you work with people, that's something like when I start a debate or when I start a discussion or when I work with a client, I often start with something that is making them a bit shocked. You know, like I'm going for the full punch directly, like there's no turning around. And then afterwards, I'm going to soften it and we're going to talk about it and we're going to go through it. And that's my theory of like, I want to get people out of their comfort zone because once it's extended, they're willing to do a lot more.
Okay. And when you say, in your context of comfort zone, are you talking about activist work or the veganism?
Life in general. Doesn't matter.
Life in general.
Imagine when you're a business person. Imagine when you're going to have to stand on stage right now in front of 10,000 people. And you're going to have to talk about, I don't know, the latest Facebook tools, which you know nothing about. Can you imagine the feeling you feel when you're doing that?
You mean before actually doing it?
Yeah, imagine right now, I tell you, go on stage. And there's 10,000 people standing there, watching, looking at you, listening to you. And you have to talk about the new changes in the Facebook platform regarding to content video marketers or creators.
Okay.
You have no idea about the whole platform. You have no idea about any of the knowledge. And you'll have to be there and you have to start speaking about it. I mean, you're going to feel extremely uncomfortable, right?
Well, I actually feel apprehensive, but at the same time up for the challenge because I know it'll expand my comfort zone. And I know that 5-10 minutes into it, it won't be so bad.
But you know nothing about the subject, so what are you going to talk about?
Well, yeah, but, depending on how much notice I get, do a little bit of research. Google's right here.
Yeah, but you're not getting any research. I mean, you're just being put on the spot. You're going to feel out of your comfort zone because you're not. That's also why, like, if you're talking about the things that you know, you never have to be scared. And you never have to fear that because it's there. Like, you cannot study more to know, like, you will learn more along the way. But when you talk about stuff you know, it's not scary. But when you talk about stuff you don't know, it's more scary. And that's why when you meet a client and you have to explain the thing that you're doing, often the client doesn't know what you're talking about. And that also has to do with you picking the right clients, of course. But very often you have to talk to clients and make them understand things or show your vision to them, etc. It's the exact same thing. If they don't understand it, they will give you different directions when they do understand it. So that brings up the question, if you're looking for new clients, are you looking for people you have to educate, or are you looking for people who are looking for you? And that changes the whole game as well. But that's all about understanding the comfort zone of a person. If you go outside of a comfort zone of a person, you're going to get a bad reaction every single time because people don't control their emotions anymore because it's out of their comfort zone. And that's the exact same thing that Mark Zuckerberg, because that's how we got to the topic, is doing, is that he's suddenly launching the newsfeed. I mean, nobody remembers this anymore, but in 2012 or something it was that he's launching the newsfeed where suddenly I could see your things and then my mom's things and my brother's things and everybody else's things. Now it's the first thing we do. We wake up, we open Facebook, we scroll through the newsfeed. But it looks so normal now. But in 2012, if I'm correctly, it was people were protesting, like wanting to sue Facebook for their privacy and all these things. And so then he put it on some extra limitations. He took 2 steps back, but still his agenda got there. It just took 2 years or a year before it finally got to the point where he wanted it to be. But people are accepting slowly because they have to step out of their comfort zone. It's also why I think that privacy, the people who push privacy on us, is protecting themselves more. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think the less privacy we're getting, the happier we become as human beings, because we learn to let go and accept that now everything is there in this thing called the internet. And it doesn't matter whether you're on podcast, whatever. It just matters that if you're a good person, it will be good for you. If you're a bad person, it will be bad for you.
With regards to Mark Zuckerberg in 2012, I think it was around 2013 or 14 that YouTube made it so that everyone who had an account on YouTube had to have also a Google Plus account, and the whole comment system changed. And there was a massive uproar about this, and people were posting massive blogs, or you had to use their real name as opposed to like a pseudonym or something more anonymous, and people were really annoyed about that. But that is totally forgotten about today. So people do accept changes over time, slowly.
But the statement alone is already, if you look at the last 100 years, how much has changed in the last 100 years in this world? If you seriously look at this from an industrial perspective, from an environmental perspective, from a human relationship perspective, from a travel perspective, whatever perspective you want to look at, so much has changed. And in the next 20 years, so much more will change.
Yes, I'll tell you what. If you look at today versus 30 years ago it looked like the caveman age. And 30 years from now, they will say that 2017 was the caveman age. So, yep, that's always going to happen. Every 15 years or so, technology and the world changes drastically. But every 30 years ago, we see really big differences, really big shifts in change. Look at 1970 versus 1940, for example. 1970 versus 2000, big differences.
Huge. Mm-hmm. And it's normal. And I think where we are going right now is we are going to be more, like the centralization is going away. The communities are popping up more. Mass marketing is disappearing. Community marketing, influencer marketing, that's popping up, and that's going to be insanely big. It means that we as a society will be divided more, but we're more together and happy. So there's a lot of dynamics that are really interesting that I'm studying a lot, because I call this the mountain concept. And it's like for anybody who wants to be an influencer or wants to build a brand and build something popular, it's like if you try to become really big on YouTube now as an entrepreneur, it's hard because there's already a lot of people who are really big, and people only have 24 hours a day. So where they spend their attention is super, like it's limited. They cannot do more than what they're doing now. So they have to change and give up something in order to gain traction for you. Now, the only way to really get something going really fast is either stream on the success of somebody else and collaborations. I mean, that's like jumping in a river that goes downwards, and you just jump in and you pick up the pace, and like you follow in the success of others. It's easier. Or you look at new medias, new social medias, new places where people are putting their attention, and that's increasing, and you're going to make some bets, and you're going to try to figure out how it works, and you're going to try to position yourself there, and hopefully the platform will take off. And by that time, you already have 50, 60, 70 pieces of content on that platform, and you will be the leader in that platform. And that takes risks, and that will go wrong 80% of the time, but when it does pay off, it pays off big time. So it's just about willing to put in the work and believing enough in it.
Yeah, all these things I agree with. What you're essentially saying, going back a few sentences, that there's a supply and demand mismatch with the existing social medias. That's why it's quote-unquote hard to get seen and to get established on YouTube, because people only have only so much time and attention that they're willing to dedicate to certain channels and or like searching for different content on YouTube. the supply is ever increasing. YouTube are giving 300 hours of content uploaded, 300 hours every day or every hour, something like that. So
even better. Even better. Do you know that by the year from 1300 to 1400,
yeah,
that's 100 years. It took 100 years for all the information in the world to double.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how long it takes today for all the information in the world to double?
Is it like 10 minutes?
11 hours, but
that's it.
11 hours is pretty insane if you imagine all the information, every single book written on Earth, times 2. All the posts on internet, times 2. Everything, times 2. Every 11 hours. I mean, that's insane.
It's distillation of knowledge, and it's the tools and the way people realize that they can take what they know and share it with the world, yeah.
Exactly, and with this evolution of knowledge available at such scale, automatically means that the whole schooling system is flawed, because why do I need to learn who was the 17th president of the United States? You know, it's one click away on my phone and I'm there. So learning practical skills, learning how to learn, learning how to develop yourself, learning how to become self-aware, learning how to communicate and deal with other people, learning how to sell, how to present, how to do all these other things are way more important in today's world than learning in general.
Yeah, I agree. You mentioned that the 17th president, that information is essentially a Google click away. I covered that in one of my books. I think it's the Google effect, where we're relying on other things, such as Google, just to store the information, and when we need it, we access it. So go on to Google now and just type that in and get the answer right like that.
Yeah, I mean, it became a verb, right? I tell my mom, if my mom asks me something, like, Randy, can I eat this, or what should I do with that? And I'm like, go Google it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, yeah. And you also talked about collaborations as how to get known online. Yeah, because it's branding by association. It's leveraging one another's reputation or knowledge or community and following to be seen for exposure.
Exactly. And if you have you have to become a bit of a gambler when it's about collaborations. It's like when you think, because you're investing like maybe 2 hours, 3 hours of your time into collaborating with somebody. So is it worth it, those 2-3 hours? Now, if you're starting up, you have all the time in the world. So you can do all the collaborations you want, because the collaborations bring you attention, the attention brings awareness around you, and the awareness might lead you to get a job, to land another client, or somebody who's inspired by you and wants to know more about you. But if you're like me, for example, now I know exactly where I'm going. I know my things to do. I have a to-do list 2 weeks planned in advance. I'm busy. I have my time pretty much mapped out. For me to decide to go on a collaboration with somebody, I look at, does this guy have the work ethic and potential to become something bigger? They don't have to be bigger than I am right now, because that's not going to work. If I ask Gary Vaynerchuk right now to interview me for his podcast, I don't bring any value to his podcast. It would only be value to me. So it would be a really selfish thing for me to ask him to be on his podcast. So in general speaking, the people who want you on your podcast are the people that are starting out themselves, that are just like our relationship here right now.
Yeah, it's what the person can bring to the channel. It's just a higher standard. Gary's not going to work with you, but he'll work with Tony Robbins like he did a few months ago.
Exactly.
Because they're at the same level.
But maybe in 3 years from now, 4 years from now, I'm at the level where he would, because he would gain value out of it for his audience or for something else, because you did something remarkable, you're standing out, you're doing something bigger, better than the rest. And I think then the fact is, like, who should you pick to collaborate with? It's easy. It's like, you already wrote books. I mean, you're a guy with a lot of passion and drive, and you're already on Steemit, and like, you're actively searching and engaging and being active. And I think that's a character trait that I share, and something that I believe that these character traits are necessary to become successful. So yeah, I'm willing to invest my time in being on a podcast that's not big yet, but has the potential to become really big, because it's not about the podcast and where it's now. It's about the guy who's actually running the podcasts.
Two things there. One about the podcast, another thing about Steam It. The podcast, and other content as well, like a benchmark that I try and go for is to make everything evergreen. Because when you make it evergreen, it means you're just like planting a seed, and then a year later that seed's turned into a tree. And then that tree gives us more seeds and more opportunity and more ideas. So the more evergreen stuff you create and put online, you're benefiting really in the long term. And the more seeds you plant that are evergreen, a month from now, a year from now, you're getting exponentially more reward purely by focusing on creating evergreen content. Which is another reason why the podcast can be quite powerful.
It's like compound interest.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, it just compounds on top of each other. I mean, especially when you start like having directed, like meaningful areas and platforms where you distribute, and you know what you distribute, and you're consistent with this, and you do this for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, then by that time you have so much stuff, data, awareness built up that when somebody discovers you, he can actually dive in and consume the past 5 years of your life and learn all the lessons that you learned along the way. The power of documentation and evergreen, like you call it. I mean, people underestimate it so much, and it's never too late to join the party.
No.
So it doesn't matter if you don't have anything yet. You should start now. If you're listening this and you have a company, you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to do something, you have to start creating and documenting content that is serving your audience, not selling your product, that is serving your audience.
Yeah, the way I see it is that everything you do and create and talk about has got to pass what I call the so what test. I'm going to write a book on this. I'm not quite sure when, but the next major thing, everything you do, everything you create has got to pass the so what test. For example, the title or the content of this podcast, why do you care about it? So what? You know, here's a podcast, here's a link. It's this topic, this conversation. So what? Why do I care? If you as a business or a marketer or whatever can get over that barrier, that so what? Why should I care? Then you can potentially capture that demand, because people aren't going to, not much time in the day. So they're going to be very picky or very choosy about what they watch and what they consume. For one, I watch most of my YouTube videos at like ×2 speed, just to consume the stuff and move on to the next thing. I'm not going to consume something unless it means something to me, unless it's important to me, unless it brings value to me, something that I think is going to be useful, or that looks interesting, or this guy, I subscribed to him and now he's got something else on there. It's past that so what test. Like there's other channels out there that do makeup and all the rest. It means nothing to me. It fails the so what test. Why would I bother with that? Or some cooking channels, that has some soap. They pass the so what test in their own way, but not all the time. So that's what I look for as well now. Why should people give a damn about what you've created?
Yeah, and I think that's where often we as business owners or entrepreneurs, designers, musicians are so passionate and focused on the things that we are doing, that the center of what we're doing is about the mystery of what we're doing and our product, and we romanticize our stuff and forget that the market in the end decides. Once you get this mind shift and you realize that the market is the market and the market decides, you don't care about creating a blog and wanting it to be perfect. Just put it out there, see what people react to, and if you create 100 blog posts, you know what your audience cares about, and then go write a book about that subject that they care about, because you just did a very detailed study of what your audience would like to read and what they don't like to read. And when you write that book, that will be a good pillar for you to get more clients. The book is not to make money. The book is there to be a lead magnet for your business, to get people coming towards you, or pay you higher speaking fees, or pay you higher consulting fees, or all these other things. And I think that's where a lot of people mess up. I had this guy, and he's a musician. He's been on TV. He was really successful, and he wanted me to do his branding and build his business and build his empire as a musician and get success. But he so over-romanticized everything that he was doing, and like he's making a new album and it takes him a year and 3 months to make a new album, and in the meantime there's maybe one update a month on social media and all these things that I just said, okay, we're not in line with what you believe and what I believe. And I believe that you're doing it the way that it worked in the 1970s. And right now we're living in 2017 and it's not working anymore like this. The world has changed. The way people consume everything has changed. I mean, imagine in the 70s, you were forced to be stuck on the radio because there were only 2 TV shows on and they sucked and the radio music was really fun. So the impact that one song could have if it got played on the radio is insane. Now, we're never going to see a band like the Beatles anymore. We're never going to see a new John Lennon or Michael Jackson or whatever. I really, really doubt that because I think that all the attention is spread out in communities and it's not getting pushed through one channel. So you're going to get this amazing breakdancer that's super famous in the breakdancing scene, but nobody in the ballet scene will ever hear about this guy ever.
So go back a little bit. You mentioned Steemit. Now, I first heard about Steemit roughly in May, and some people were talking about how it's dodgy or scam or something like that. But I've come to realise that with these things, just follow the money. Yeah, there was that potential of it being something from the get-go, but at the same time, there's no initial investment, no upfront cost. And all you're really doing is just creating content and putting it on, essentially what is a directory that's very similar to Reddit. And I think that platform, and there's probably loads of other platforms out there as well, similar to it, or different business models, that have underappreciated a level of attention where you can just create something, in general, YouTube or whatever, and share it on that platform, and it will get attention, you become known, liked and trusted, and that helps, and it's a building block that helps to build your overall reputation or helps to build send traffic to your main website.
Yeah, and
so I think Steam is very underutilized right now.
I think so too, but that's exactly what I mean with the mountain concept. It means that Steemit, if you're not on Steemit yet, be on Steemit because the chances that Steemit will rise is insane. I mean, it's the first of its kind. It's the first to market that does something like this in this way. And I think this is a really good view in the future of where it's going because I think that the mass social medias like even like Instagram and Facebook, etc., I think they will become more segmented as well. Like, for example, I am vegan and I want to help entrepreneurs. Now, if I just go on the internet and I say I want to help entrepreneurs, this means that, yes, I'm in a niche. I'm in the niche of entrepreneurs, but there's so many niches in those niches that, do you want to help an entrepreneur that has a dentistry or a fitness center? Or do you want to help entrepreneurs that are building buildings, or do you want to help entrepreneurs that create new food items, or what type of entrepreneur do you want to help? And then think about it like this. If you become the expert of helping dentists, if a dentist would need help, is he going to look to the regular guy helping entrepreneurs, or is he going to look for the guy who's an expert at helping dentists? So automatically, if you niche yourself, your value will go up as well. This is true if you look for work as an entrepreneur, but how does this relate to social media? I think we're going to get more niched platforms as well. So you're going to get a social platform for dentists. And, that's really writing about, it's an open source type of thing, like Steemit, where everybody can just contribute and everything, but it's really about that certain topic. And what this allows to do is that you can dive in way deeper. You can make the whole website tailored towards that. I mean, Reddit already does it a little bit with their different site niches and stuff. But I think this can be executed way better. And I think that's a really big opportunity in the market right now. Create services for existing services and then try to be the guy on top of those services, providing them value.
I want to add 2 other things to that. One with regards to dentists and the community and Steemit itself. I think the Steemit layout, the platform, the HUD, the UI is a bit weak. I think it could do it with upgrading the actual surface and the functionality. And also with regards to the dentistry, one little hack, one little strategy you can do is, let's say that you are an expert, a key person of influence in the dentistry community. Okay, fine. But then you figure out what are the communities out there that in that dentistry community, the supply of dentists is through the roof, so the demand is quite static or quite minimal. But if you go to, say, the parenting community of, parents of 5-year-olds, the supply of dentists over there is next to nothing. So if you can figure out a way of them discovering you by creating content that passes the so what test by their standards and their definition, then you can be seen as your reputation can grow then and expand outwards from the dentistry and suddenly into the parents, because they have a lot of sweets. The children eat a lot of sweets, so they would care about the kind of stuff you're telling them and the kind of information that you're sharing and the advice as well. So that's one way of remaining like in a monopoly in the dentistry community, but then expanding it outwards and figuring out ways that you can be seen and heard elsewhere, and yet still have your same original message and purpose.
But that's what you should do every single time. You should strategize not for your interests. You should strategize on how to get a message across for their interest. How does it benefit them? And
because
if you do that, then it will way easier pass the so what test.
Yeah, because you have got something in your head that other people will pay for, even if it's not in the exact community that you're starting out in. So, yes.
Let me give you an example also I'm working with this non-profit organization right now, and I have to redesign their brand. And they have a label that is put on items and on food items that shows a certain standard.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest amount of money they make is through the label, selling the rights to the label. So people could actually use that label. So that's made from the commercial economic side. But on the other side, they also try to make money from people who donate. And I tell them, get rid of that part for now. Like, use it what you have and let people who want to continue, but focus on getting more of the big bucks from the big companies that want to use your label in order to brand their product. So use that instead, and then provide massive amounts of value towards your audience. And this is a really cool way if you're a nonprofit, because you can really give everything you want. You don't have to hold back. You never have to ask for money. You never have to give a right hook. You can just give. Do that for a year or two, build up your platform, and the stronger you get there, just like you said, if you have 1,000 fans, you're already doing pretty good. The stronger you're going to get there, the more value your label will get and will become, and the more people will end up buying your label. Now, I'm not selling my label in any single way. I'm just building up a community of people who know about my label. But because the community gets bigger, the value of the product goes up. And this is the same thing. Like, if you try just to get the money from the clients, of the donators, if you start organizing events and try to get money out of them, it's way harder to get clients because you can give them less. There's less value in it for them because they have to pay more. You know what I mean?
Yeah. This is why I say that you want to take everything you know and share it with the world. Share content, blogs, videos, etc., just to be seen, to be heard, and to be known, and to be liked and trusted. Also helps with SEO as well. And as you give things for free, people will appreciate that and recognize you as an authority and subscribe to you or follow you and start to care more about what you're doing and what you're saying. And also, law of reciprocity. The more free things I give out, more free time that I give in the podcast or in the hundreds of videos, the more, especially if they deep dive into it, a year later, for example, the more willing they are to buy from me, or to follow me, or buy my next book, or things like that, or work with me.
Exactly. It's the free content you're giving. First of all, we talked about it already, but we're living in the age of information. It takes 11 hours for all the information to double. So, naturally speaking, your content, your knowledge, the things you think you know that are so valuable are worth shit. They're worth nothing. It's like the biggest experts in the world are giving their information for free. That means that your information that you have with less experience, with less knowledge, with less everything is worth a lot less, because you need to feel privileged for the fact that somebody's willing to listen to you for even a minute in a world where there's so much information right now. So if you can put your knowledge out there, if you can put your information out there and help people, and now this is not easy, like, to grab the attention of somebody requires a lot of talent and a lot of trial and error and figure out what works, what doesn't work, listening. It's not going to happen overnight. But once you can get the attention of the people, that's worth way more than you keeping that stuff for you. Plus, in today's world, people can discover you while you are sleeping because you put information out there. They gained value from you while you were sleeping.
Yeah, you're duplicating yourself.
Exactly.
Information is very commoditized. It's I don't know what the phrase is, not dime a dozen or such, but it's so common. It's so inexpensive. It's just forget about it. And most people haven't got the time or energy or the will or the attention or they're too ignorant or any excuse for people to learn or watch your video but not apply what you've learned and or not even watch your video in the first place.
Exactly.
So there really is no competitive advantage lost because not everyone will apply it. Not everyone will watch it for one reason or another.
And look at it like this. For anybody who's listening and is still not putting content out there, look at it like this. All the content you're giving, you can give it away for free because there's no, like, if your client wants to get this information, he's going to find it anyway with or without you. There's no doubt about that. So if he wants to find it, he'll find it. The only thing that changes and the fact that you're still worth money and that people value you is because everybody wants intimacy. The level of pricing goes up as the intimacy increases. The amount of knowledge that you're sharing and the willingness to share never stops at whichever stage of your funnel people are. Like, you need to be willing to give every single thing that you know away to the people. And then people will want to get more from you. And as the level of intimacy grows, the moment people want to do one-on-one coaching for you, or they want to buy a course from you that you actually designed to go through a process to get a certain result, or when the level of intimacy grows, the pricing goes up. But the pricing is not based on your knowledge in an age where all the information and knowledge that you have is out there for free.
Also, the demand goes up as well, because when they love what you do, and you then create something new, video on YouTube, for example, and YouTube sends them a notification, whether on the phone or email, people are more likely to stop what they're doing and watch that.
Exactly. You create a relationship, you build trust. It's just like I call it P2P. Like, we're not B2B, we're not B2C, we're not B2G, we are P2P. We're people to people. We're dealing with people. Like, even though they're on a device, and even though I never met you, and even though we never had beers together in a bar, or even though we only spoke for an hour max prior to recording the whole podcast thing, you are still a human being. We are working on building up a relationship. And this is step one of our relationship. Maybe in a year from now, my podcast will be really big. Maybe in a year from now, your podcast will be really big. And we brought value to each other in this exchange in the early stage of your career. And maybe in 2 years from now, we'll meet again on an event or something, and we connect because we already had this relationship. And then suddenly you do something and you provide a service, and I'm exactly looking for that service. And because we've built that relationship, I'm grateful for you. You are grateful for me. We partner up. We do some business together. And this is the way business is done. It took 2 years before we ended up doing serious business, but we've nurtured the relationship in the meantime. And creating content, letting people discover you, having an email list, etc., is all part of the nurturing process of building a relationship. If you get 1,000 people on your email list, if 100 people read it, if 10 people actually click on the link, and if one person out of that 1,000 actually decides to book a job with you later in the month, that's a big win.
Yes. And you times that by 1,000, and different people approaching you at different times, and people constantly finding you all the time, then you've got a totally scalable business where you're duplicating your energy, you're duplicating your time as well, and you're duplicating your presence, you're being discovered all over the world.
And the biggest thing is that, imagine you have 20 hours to help other people, to be a counselor, because maybe you want to start your own business, but at the same time you want to do some counseling and coaching and strategy sessions with other brands and people. If you start out, you have a hard time getting clients. Why? Because why would I trust you to tell me what's wrong with my business? Like, why would I invest any time in, like, so many entrepreneurs come to me and say, it's so hard to get clients, and clients, they really don't know anything. Clients really don't respect my time. No, because they don't value your time. They don't know you yet. They don't see results yet. And you might look for the wrong clients, but you're not going to get those clients before you get the shitty clients, because you need to show a little bit of results for these shitty clients. But if you create massive content on skill and you're going to show off your skills, then you can actually turn the table around and let people come to you because they've discovered you by creating content. And once they've discovered you, they're like, hey, this guy is good. Now, how do they discover you? Don't put stuff on YouTube or just start a podcast or whatever. If you start a podcast, make sure you have a Facebook group for those type of people that will be interested in your podcast. Bring value to it. Like, just having a YouTube video about entrepreneurship is not going to get discovered. You're going to need to have a lot of time and put a lot of effort into making really special movies for them to be even noticed, because they don't need to be twice as good as Gary Vaynerchuk's movie. They need to be 10 times as good as Gary Vaynerchuk's movie, or Tony Robbins' movie, or Russell Brunson's movie. It doesn't matter. People are not going to shift their attention from that. So once they are discovering you, then you don't have a problem with getting clients, because clients are actually coming to you. And when you get clients and when you go out for clients, you might ask $20 an hour or euro or 30 euro an hour. But when they're coming to you, you can suddenly say, okay, I want 120 euro. You 4x'd your initial ask because people are coming to you instead of the other way around, which turns the table around because you are the expert. You don't have to go convince them. You don't have to prove yourself. It's like they're happy that they're with you. And this is a process that takes time. But once you're there, it's the best.
Yeah, definitely. And Randy, I'm just very curious. Before we wrap this up, I want to talk about veganism.
Cool.
Because about a year and a half ago, I realised or clicked on that milk from cows aren't really designed for us. You know, they're designed to get a baby calf from 20 kilograms to, say, 200 kilograms as soon as possible. And that we're not really designed to consume milk once we get past the breastfeeding stages. And also that milk is designed for cows rather than bovines or such, as opposed to humans. And a few weeks ago, I was watching the documentary What the Health.
Amazing, right?
Yes, and shortly after that, Cowspiracy. And I've come to realise that we're not really designed anatomically to digest meat either, with regards to the intestines and the structure of the jaw and all the rest. So, over the past month or so, I've been experimenting with, like, a hint of fruitarian, practicing with a vegan, trying also some dry fasting, intermittent fasting, as well as water fasting. And by chance, this morning, I was doing a dry fast yesterday. And 2 weeks ago, I did a 5-day water fast. And shortly before that, I did another single 1-day dry fast.
How was that?
And every now and then doing intermittent fasting. How was what exactly?
The water fast.
Day 1 was the worst. I'm not quite sure. Maybe it's the metabolism or parasites, I don't know what, but it was horrible, horrible, horrible feeling. I did a video about this as well. Just a horrible feeling. Very down in the dumps. Day 2 was actually all right. Like 80-90% plus energy. Day 3 was 5-10% less, and day 3 and day 4 was a bit drowsy but active. I noticed that on day 3 that whenever I stood up, I started to stretch, I started to zone out a little bit and feel a little lightheaded, and that led me then to think, okay, end of day 4, let's finish this, because I don't want that to get worse. And what I originally wanted to do, back in June, I wanted to do a water fast for all of July. But I realised when I started it that that's going to be way too much to ask for. So just 5 days.
Untrained for sure, yeah. I did a 10-day juice fast, so I still got a lot of nutrients in, but it's only juice. And for me, the third day, like the first 2 days were not so hard for me. But the third day, it's like my body was like trying to force me to eat. And it was really interesting to experience, actually. And what I really liked about it, that afterwards, in the end, your mind is not so obsessed about food anymore. And you realize that it's important, but you're not craving it in a way that I'm doing today, for example. Like I'm thinking about redoing it to reset my body. But I think intermittent fasting is also really interesting for that, because you control more the moments that you're eating. And I think we eat way too much, and we consume way too much and way too regularly. And but that's a feeling. Like I have zero expertise in this. I know what I've researched, but I'm no doctor. I'm no scientist. This is just a personal experience that I'm sharing. So don't take anything for truth or whatever. But it's it's interesting. I like to challenge the status quo, and I really think there's something to it. I just didn't figure out my own rhythm yet, because when you start up a company, you should try to simplify everything in your life except what you're trying to build.
Yeah, change status challenge as well. Very similar, or undermine it, or just find ways to bypass it. Yeah. With regards to What the Health, you said it was amazing. About 3 years ago, I met someone briefly that was diabetic, and for them to have like an ice cream, they had to do a little bit of light exercise for 10 or so minutes. And my reasoning back then was, why bring this he was young, I don't know how old he was, and my reasoning back then was, why does he have to do exercise just to have an ice cream, when if you bring him up on a vegetarian diet, or even vegan, I knew nothing about all this back then, he'll never have that taste or that craving for ice cream. So I was then thinking, well, just put him on vegetarian from like day one of his life, and he'll never have that craving. And then now, after after watching that documentary, What the Health, there's indications or implementations as well that veganism, quote unquote, cures diabetes. I've yet to do more research into this.
It's true. So far, what I've researched myself, like I'm not a doctor, but we have this famous guy in the Netherlands here, and he struggled with diabetes for the past 10 years. Now, he saw What the Health 3 weeks ago, and he's free of diabetes after 10 years. Like, literally, after 3 weeks. And that's insane. And I don't say for everybody the results will be that fast and that extreme, etc. And you should see somebody who's an expert in the vegan diet and diabetes, because they will know what they're talking about, and I don't. But it has to do with the carbohydrates that are way more balanced, no more meat, because our liver turns every single animal protein that we eat into a hormone that's called IGF-1, insulin growth factor number 1. And that's a hormone that is making a baby calf into a huge cow, or that's making us into a huge cow. And that's the thing that we mostly don't really want. Also, it's IGF-1 is the hormone that is feeding cancer cells like crazy, because it makes them grow more rapidly, if I'm correctly. Again, I'm not an expert, just some research that I know on the top of my head. But it's super interesting. And when I discovered that, plus the environment like Cowspiracy, plus the ethical side, because, I mean, in the beginning I started as a healthy vegan because I did it for health, but within 3 days I already changed my mind and I did it for the environment and the ethics. And now ethics is number 1. And like, because, you can have a cheat day. You can be vegan. If you do it about health, you can have a cheat day, and every Saturday you're enjoying yourself and you're enjoying life. But there is no cheat day when it comes to ethics. You cannot say, hey, on Saturday I'm going to rape somebody. The rest of the week I'm fine, I'm doing good, but Saturdays I keep for rape.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing on ethics. So that's also why I'm really fascinated by, for example, Gary Vaynerchuk, where he says doing the right thing is always the right strategy. And I'm like, I so want to have a conversation about veganism with him.
Well, I'm confident that when you work towards it, you'll get it.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that guy, Netherlands, 10 years, and he cured it in 3 weeks. What is his name?
Gordon. I don't know his last name, but Gordon.
Right, I'll look into him.
Yeah, I'll send you a link.
Please do.
And now he wants to open, he's so passionate about it that he now actually wants to open up a fast food chain for healthy foods. And he's planning to open within this year already. And he wants to do it throughout Europe. First starts in the Netherlands and then moves it abroad and be like the McDonald's of vegan, healthy, fast food type of things. And this guy has money, this guy has connections, this guy has experience. He's already run multiple restaurants and everything on the side as well. So I'm really curious to see what he's going to come up with. And I think just like we spoke about evolution, I think that in the next 30 years, we're going to look back and our grandchildren or our grand-grandchildren will look at us eating animals now the way we look at people treating black people as slaves 300 years ago.
I hadn't thought of it that way before, and I've not given that much thought, but potential. 2 things. Any idea what Gordon's business will be called?
No idea. I just heard something briefly on the TV when I was researching it.
Other thing is that once this podcast and the YouTube channel is up and running, and it's largely leveraged, and other people are like managing, the interviews, but I'll still do it and all the rest. I want to start something with hemp, with cannabis sativa, potentially in procurement, but this is like a little bit down the line.
Okay, that sounds cool.
Yeah, it is. But I realised that I want to focus on this personal brand first because it builds the attention and the respect, and so when I go into that, there's some people can follow me over, or more expertise in content creation.
But what do you do now? How do you make your money now?
I've got another business that I started 2 years ago. That the little gifts company. I'm slowly. I want to move away from that because.
What does it do?
Gifts. It's okay. Here we go. It's personalized messages, Randy, on potatoes.
I heard about that. Are you the first one in the world to do that, or?
Second, I'd say second. I'm the first one in the United Kingdom to do it.
I saw it on Shark Tank, I think.
No, yeah, that's the States. I'm the guy who does it in the UK.
Funny.
Yeah.
How does that go? I mean, is it working?
Yes, it's working.
It's a profitable business now.
Yes.
That's sick.
Yeah.
You get reorders?
Yes. Yeah, there's always someone's birthday as well. The problem with it is the business model is essentially Adrian of 2015, and I've learned a lot since then. So it's like I want to move away from that into something much more scalable, leveraged, sophisticated, complex. That's selling multiple different kinds of products, and it's much more media focused, because that one's just all about word of mouth and just selling one product, which is great, but I can do much better now. So I want to move away from that to something bigger fish to fry, so to speak. Always there's something bigger and better to do.
That's cool. I understand totally. That's cool, but it gained you so much experience. I mean, you're 23 now, right?
Yes.
So being 23 and already having a successful business that actually makes money, the lessons you've learned that way, you're so young, like you're 7 years younger than I am. So imagine in the next 7 years what you can accomplish already.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, 7 years ago, even 6 years ago, I could have started all this back then. It might be a bit harder, and different software and technicality. But yeah, there was no excuse. The way I see it then is better late than never. You're doing it now. You're doing it now rather than tomorrow or next week or next month.
Look, I'm 30 and I'm starting my business. Only when I'm 30. And I'm sure I will make a better business today than I would have done when I was 20 because I have so much life experience under my belt. And I've been a freelancer or self-employed or doing stuff myself, my own way, creating my own path, being my own creative director and strategist, etc. Since I'm 17, for the past 13 years. So
yeah,
it's better to, like, the first business. I think it's rare for people that their first business is their best business.
Well, it was my second one, but yeah, I know what you mean.
So, I mean, even if you're 50 and you want to start a new business after your hemp business, like, if you see my roadmap, like there's businesses until I'm dying, getting reborn, dying again, being reborn, and dying again. So many business ideas I have right now on my plate that I could potentially do, but focus in the end is the main thing. Like, you know.
Yeah, that's why I decided to focus on this personal brand, and then when it's up and running, and having a D-Rock following me, then focus on that hemp. Just like Gary Vaynerchuk, he's got Vayner Media. He's also got, I think, Vayner R or Vayner X, and he's got the actual social media presence. And then now he's moving into sneakers. So it's just, this is the public side, but also there's a business as well.
Yeah, of course, but that's the whole content marketing strategy in general.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why it's working so well. That's why everybody should be doing it. I mean, look at the story of Blendtec. You know the Blendtec blender?
Will it blend? Yeah.
Well, there it is, guys. Will it blend? I mean, these guys were 17 nerds, 17 engineers with no clue about socializing to a market, all these things. They had no idea what to do, and then they brought a marketer in. And the marketer saw that they were testing the engine with something really heavy, something really weird that nobody uses. And he's like, hey, let me grab a camera. He took a camera, made the first video. 2 days later, they had more, like a few million views. And that's how they exploded themselves, and that's how they became the brand expert. They don't talk about buy our product. They don't talk about look at the quality. They don't talk about this one is stronger. They don't talk about anything. They just entertain people through the strongest asset and differentiator of their product.
Yeah,
and I think
everyone likes to buy, but they don't like to be sold to.
Yeah, but then that also means that not everybody should run a vlog like Gary does. I mean, you can find a way to beat that vlog for that, but Gary's audience are people who, like he shows his life and he shows it to entrepreneurs. Well, entrepreneurs, he's building connections for the future because maybe you or maybe me will be big enough to be a potential client or speaker or have a relationship with him. And we have already built a relationship and are big fans of his work. So we would be if he would ask me in 10 years from now, if I would do a free speech for him, or if I would do a speech for him, I would do it for free because he gave me so much. I feel guilted into doing something for him. That's the thing. People have to feel guilted to give you their money, and you only get there by creating massive amounts of value for your audience.
And that is the secret to it, I think. Just guilting them into it.
Exactly.
But Randy, I think we should end it here then.
Okay.
As episode 3.
Cool.
It was great. It was really great talking to you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity.
A lot of content, a lot of stuff to talk about. A lot of that word talked about. It was great. Yeah.
Cool. You want to do a close still, or do I have to do something still, or we're good?